We're flooding in.
Yep.
Oh, it's a slow flood. Sarah, is there an opportunity for us to turn off the other participants' video cameras?
Yeah, of course. Like right now?
Yeah, let's just do that just to maximize the band.
Yep.
Perfect. We'll start in just 1 minute, folks.
Okay. Hey, everyone, before we get started, let me go through some rules for tonight's event. Please keep in mind that the session is recorded, so please act accordingly. Do not spam the chat and be mindful of what you say. If there are any questions during a presentation, please hold them towards the end and type them out in the chat where either Scott or myself will read them out to the presenter.
In times of special gatherings, meetings, and events, Indigenous people first begin with a land acknowledgement. Today is such an occasion. For many of us, the land on which we gather here today is the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We are grateful for the opportunity to work, teach, and learn here, and we acknowledge and we thank all the generations of Indigenous people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. We recognize and appreciate their historic connection to this place and state our collective commitment to make the promise and the challenge of truth and reconciliation real in our Seneca community. As such, we are guests on this space, and it is our shared obligation to respect, honor, and sustain this land.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Scott Pugsley, and I am the industry coordinator and a professor within the School of Fire Protection Engineering Technology. Last year, at this event last year, I started out by saying thank you to everyone for attending and for being so generous with your time, given that we were amongst some challenging times of COVID. And approximately 2 or 3 days immediately after that, we shifted from on-campus activities, on-campus work, to being exclusively online, which meant we've now started our journey for online learning. Wow, have things changed in 12 months. We might not be on campus any longer, but we are still very, very active in all the things that we're doing. With virtual meetings, with virtual classes, and with countless Fire Protection Student Association led events such as movie nights and game nights, along with our signature fire panel sessions, we are very, very active nonetheless. And we have certainly tried very, very hard to continue to support the Seneca community and the industry at large during this last year. With both staff willingness to use new platforms, for us all to learn new methods, we've been able to continue, and until recently, we've been able to return to campus with some limited burn activities. That is wonderful to have completed and wonderful to have started to do again. All of that while we're trying to have some fun at the same time. Online doesn't have to be stuffy and dull, and if we're able to put our minds to it, we can certainly continue with wonderful things, and wonderful things have happened this semester. Even the FPSA, even the Fire Protection Student Association has gotten into the mix with various online campaigns. This was their own 25 days of fire safety, and if you were on any of our social media, you would have seen this. We don't have time for all of those videos now, but it was such a wonderful way for them to participate and reach out to our communities every day during that holiday period. We've also had some pretty great guests, whether it's been Bernie popping into the classrooms or our friends at Fire Department Chronicles contributing for some of our PSAs. We have had lots of laughs this semester. And with so much being canceled, so much being postponed, we're very, very happy to be able to pivot and continue with an event like this, our annual dinner, just without the dinner, which isn't that bad. Although I do have a craving for catering food on campus. In the spirit of last year, I would like to thank everyone for attending and being so generous with your time yet again during these challenging times of COVID. Tonight is our 10th annual Fire Protection Student Association event online, which is the norm, which is perfectly fine. We have guests from Seneca, we have alumni and staff, as well as guests joining us from across Canada and the United States. We are fortunate to also have members of the alumni family with us. We're very, very fortunate to be able to be supported by the Alumni Association, the Alumni Department with this event. So I would like to just pause for a moment and provide them an opportunity to speak to us for a moment.
Giving back to Seneca community is personally very self-rewarding, but they really need people to give back.
I'm happy to donate my talent to Seneca because these are great people. It's a great organization to work with. Everyone at Seneca puts the students first.
I believe that I'm doing a good thing, and hopefully it will have an impact in someone's life.
I give my time in lots of different ways to Seneca. I've volunteered with the Board of Governors. I've volunteered as coming in for networking events, for guest speakers. I've attended numerous Seneca dinner events and award banquets. It just really makes you feel like you're a better person because you're involved in the community.
Give back in the same way that I do to hire co-op students and subsequently hire graduates. You get quality right out of the gate. You get great people with great experience, great education, and now they can hit the ground running. It's a much better resource for them and quickly elevate them from just being the new person to becoming an asset within someone's organization in a heartbeat.
I decided to give back because when I was a student, I received a lot of awards, bursaries, and scholarships. So now I believe that I'm giving the money back to Seneca College.
As a Seneca student, of course, I'm really thankful to donors like Erkin because
to give back in the same way they can hit the ground running. It's a much better resource for them and quickly elevate them from just being the new person to becoming an asset within someone's organization in a heartbeat.
I decided to give back because when I was a student, I received a lot of awards, bursaries, and scholarships. So now I believe that I'm giving the money back to Seneca College.
as a Seneca student, of course, I'm really thankful to donors like Erkin because they make sure that our efforts don't go unnoticed. My Seneca journey was like an icing on a cake, and the donors like Erkin make a cherry on the top. That's really nice for us.
I always found time to come back to Seneca to give back. So it's extremely flexible and you can choose. There's so many opportunities. The time commitment is really what you want because Seneca will embrace you no matter how much you give.
Thank you very much. Sarah, if you're able to hear me, could you please check the participant cap? I'm getting some messages that there's some students that are having a hard time joining the session.
Yeah, I'm just looking into it. I'm just really not sure whether I'm able to, our capacity was 500. And it didn't give us anything to renew. So I'm just looking into it to see, I don't know whether it'll screw up the whole thing if I try to just add it right now to see if I can do that.
Well, let's have you.
Do you want me to try it?
Try to work on that, and we'll continue for as long as we can. And then
Okay.
if we need to, we'll find a plan B.
Okay.
Good. From that alumni perspective, I did want to also just share with everyone that our relationship with alumni has been quite strong. And I'm very happy to call Barry Namarock one of my close personal friends. What you can see on screen is representative of 2 of our Fire Protection Challenge coins. And we're very, very happy this year to let everyone know that all graduating students, as well as all of the graduating students from last year, because you were part of online and on all this crazy COVID stuff, you'll all be receiving a challenge alumni coin on behalf of the School of Fire Protection and behalf of alumni. So earlier today, we paused to give thanks to the current group of volunteers that make up the Fire Protection Student Association's Executive Committee. I wanted to thank, and we wanted to thank Philip, Mike, Ty, Simone, Horik, and Shane for all of your work this year with providing some great events for our fellow students to participate within. Also, at the end of every year, we must say goodbye to several graduating students that have served as executives. So this year we say congratulations and farewell to Philip, Mike, and Ty. At the lower portion of the screen, you can also see that there is a special challenge coin just for our fire protection executives. So gentlemen, I look forward to seeing you very soon where I can in person give you these coins.
Each year, the Fire Protection Student Association acknowledges students that show a high level of interest and initiative in their fire protection studies. Students that receive this award will be self-disciplined, punctual, participate in class, determined, and committed to learning and understanding fire protection principles. This year, our 2-year Fire Protection Engineering Technician Award goes to Yimao Yang, and our 3-year Fire Protection Engineering Technology Award goes to Grant Murchison. Please join me in congratulating them both.
And I'll turn over the microphone to Mike.
On behalf of the fire protection student body, I would like to thank 2 people who are very special to us. Our current Seneca Fire Protection Student Advisor, Sarah Osborne, and our previous student advisor, Susan Taylor. I'm sure current and former students of our program can agree that your positions is the very backbone of our program, providing us with support and guidance when we're in need, and reminding us of important dates and events as they're about to occur. So once again, thank you both, Susan and Sarah, for all the hard work you put into steering the students in the right direction.
Wonderful. And I'm just getting a message that the cap for the session's been fixed. So we welcome those of you who are joining us just a few minutes late.
This school year has been a period of great change. We all had to adjust to a new reality, and in a time of increasing uncertainty and isolation, find creative ways to remain connected. With these new challenges in mind, our president, Philip Bremillard, made strides to keep the FPSA as focused and active as it's always been, even in this online realm. He proposed wonderful ideas for initiatives and put in the extra effort to ensure they were brought to fruition, like the video challenge, 25 Days of Fire Safety Tips from Seneca Fire Students, a series of student-created fire protection videos released each day of the December holiday season. If you happened to come across our Twitter page at the time, I doubt you could have missed one of Philip's informative recordings. I can personally say that Philip's positive, always supportive demeanor has certainly helped to make this very strange year a little more manageable. Thank you, Philip, for keeping the FPSA grounded in our ongoing commitment to community amongst fire protection students at Seneca. As you venture forth beyond the college, we wish you continued success. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Philip. And what you're now seeing on screen is the plaque of appreciation, but really it's a alumni diploma frame that we have had customized to include your executive coin at the top. Now, this alumni coin frame is available from the bookstore for anybody who wants to. It's not a plug. I don't get a cut of that action. But if there were other students who were interested in having their credentials presented in a similar fashion, the ordering for that is available through the bookstore. So we're glad that everyone else has been able to join us with that weird little glitch. But if that's the only glitch, I'm so glad it happened while I was talking and not either one of our keynote presenters. So for that, there's the one glitch. Knock on wood, we're all good. All right. So again, welcome everyone for being here and for taking the time out of your days and to fill this virtual Zoom room. And I guess we've filled it twice now. All right. I'm going to turn this over to Mike for our keynote introductions.
For tonight's keynote speaker, we have Shane Mintz, the Canadian Regional Director of the National Fire Protection Association. Mr. Mintz has an extensive background in fire and life safety, having worked with many municipalities and also serving in the executive management roles within the cities of Toronto, Markham, Burlington, and even as Assistant Deputy Fire Marshal for the Office of the Ontario Fire Marshal. If there are any questions during the presentations, please hold on to them towards the end and put them in the chat where either Scott or myself can read them out. Thank you.
Great. Shane, you can
I guess it's showtime, huh? Okay, Let me see if I can get this queued up. And tell me you can see my presentation.
Yes, we can, Mr. Mintz. You're all good.
Perfect. That's great. Excellent. Well, Scott, thank you very much for having me. I am so thrilled to be here speaking with you again this year. I've done this dinner 2 or 3 times in the past, I think, Scott. And it's never tiring to see all of the graduates, all of the new students, all of the people that are striving out to meet the challenges of their new careers. And what a great school and what a great program Seneca College has been put on. We've partnered on many occasions with Seneca College from the National Fire Protection Association. And it's just an absolutely Class A, Grade 1 organization and teachers college or teaching college. So thank you, Scott, for having me again. I really appreciate it. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Shane Mintz, and I'm the Canadian Regional Director for the National Fire Protection Association. And thank you very much, Mike, for my introduction. Let me get started a little bit here. We've done the background piece, so let's move on. So, the National Fire Protection Association is, you may or may not know much about the National Fire Protection Association, but for those of you who may not be entirely familiar with what we do, you may be asking who or what is the NFPA and what exactly do they do? Well, the NFPA is a global nonprofit organization. We were established in 1896. And since then, an organization devoted to eliminating death, injury, economic, and property loss due to fire, electrical, and related hazards. Seems like a little bit of a roll-off there, but it's a very, very old organization and one that has been able to meet its mission and visions for many, many years. Just go back a bit here. Let me just move forward here a bit. And geographically, NFPA it's based in the greater Boston area in Massachusetts, but it's got representation and engagement around the world. NFPA, we have consensus-based standards development organization with roughly 300 employees and over 60,000 members worldwide. And of that, between 6,000 and 7,000 are Canadian. And many of you may become NFPA members throughout your career. Who knows? The NFPA's mission, it's one that we strive to follow every single day, and it is to help save lives and reduce loss with information, knowledge, and passion. However, to be aware, the NFPA is not just about fire. While it was originally founded to prevent damage and property losses due to fires, it's now an organization internationally renowned as a de facto facilitator and developer of hundreds of life safety standards and technical committees. The NFPA has over 350 codes and standards, and that includes the National Electrical Code in the US, and other countries use it as well. In fact, parts of our electrical code are driven from the National Fire Protection's electrical code. And there are also 1 or more technical committees for each individual standard. So of the 350 codes and standards that we have, each has a committee and each has technical representation on those committees. The committee members work in concert with NFPA staff to develop these standards and ensure committee membership is balanced by interest categories and all are rooted in a consensus-based format. So who cares and why are they necessary? Well, NFPA codes and standards are recognized internationally as a foundation for virtually all aspects of fire and life safety issues. They're routinely referenced and accepted as the basis for many minimum standards and guidelines. And in Canada, there are more than 60 NFPA codes and standards referenced in the National Model Building and Fire Codes, as well as every provincial and territorial versions of those codes. They're recognized as industry best practice, and in the absence of other jurisdictional regulation or guidelines, they're seen as the go-to documents or reference materials. The building and fire industry regulators, along with professional engineers, architects, designers, and builders, all rely on them heavily as suitable and acceptable alternative measures to resident codes. They are also known to be defensible in court. So every code, standard, guide, or recommended practice is developed by professional subject matter experts and practitioners who are readily available to interpret or assist. Bottom line, they are there for you and for your use. So based on NFPA's history, strengths, and outreach, it's developed the fire and life safety ecosystem. And that's what we're here to talk about this evening. The fire and life safety ecosystem is a framework that identifies components that must work together to minimize risk and help prevent loss, injuries, and death. There are 8 key components to the ecosystem, and from the top, they are government responsibility, development and use of current codes, observance of referenced standards, investment in safety, a skilled workforce, code compliance, preparedness and emergency response, and an informed public. So, just for a moment, picture, if you will, where your philosophy and interests and or that of the organizations you work or collaborate with may fit into this framework. It's essential that we recognize where everyone fits and that we all have a role to play. For instance, government and policymakers must set the correct regulatory framework in order for fire protection matters and life safety matters to be resolved. Municipal building, planning, and fire officials should be advocating for using and enforcing where possible the most updated codes and standards available. Because there's a reason these standards have been updated, and it's generally to deal with an issue or problem that's arisen since the previous versions were released or published. There must be skilled workers and inspectors in these fields. There also needs to be effective response capabilities when emergencies happen, and the public needs to be informed and able to take action for their own safety. As with any ecosystem, when all the elements work together, the result is a fully functioning system that benefits all stakeholders. If one or more of these elements fail, the systems may begin to break down, and that's when tragedies may occur. When adverse events happen, the root causes can often be traced back to the breakdown of one or more of these elements. The challenge the ecosystem presents to everyone is, how do we collaborate, plan, manage, build, and operate safe environments, structures, and communities, all while at the same time meeting the needs of all stakeholders involved. No one organization or group can do this alone. And while it's not possible to prevent every tragedy from happening, NFPA believes that by committing to and promoting this fire and life safety ecosystem of prevention, protection, and education, we can further our work with other agencies and AHJs to help save lives and reduce loss. So here's what we're experiencing today. From a fire perspective, while we're currently seeing less fires, statistics are showing us that victims are more likely to die in a house fire today than they were 20 years ago. Imagine. This is troubling because the reality is there's never been more tools and devices available to prevent damaging fire injuries and death. Tools such as building plans examination, permitting processes, residential sprinklers, smoke alarms, carbon monoxide detectors, building and fire codes, inspection, and enforcement all exist today, but the implementation of them is often met with resistance from policymakers, enforcers, builders, and in some cases, even the public. Over the years, and without proper oversight and enforcement, codes and safety standards can become outdated, underused, ignored, or allowed to go on unenforced. So why is this happening? Well, codes have been allowed to become outdated because policymakers and interest groups have exploited the process to delay the adoption or, even more so, remove provisions they don't like because there may be costs or other impediments involved. There should never be a price put on safety. And in that vein, while stakeholders are mandated to follow building or fire codes, there are many more instances where reference standards, which are required as well, are not followed. Use of reference standards provides critical guidance to architects, engineers, designers, installers, facility operators, and enforcers. They are an important part of the codes and must be used to ensure a minimum level of safety for all. And if not, or when they're not, lives may be jeopardized. Additionally, while buildings need to be built to code, as a society, there may still be major gaps in ensuring enough is being done to ensure safe practices are observed while a building is under construction. You should know, buildings are never more vulnerable to a fire buildings are never more vulnerable to fire and other disasters than when they're under construction, renovation, or demolition. These gaps can arise when pressure is applied on local jurisdictions to reduce requirements to save time and/or money. Without sufficient resources to ensure that construction and maintenance meet code requirements, and without safety measures developed and implemented for workers, communities are at a grave risk for injuries, damage to property, and loss of life. And what about innovations? Professionals know well the requirement of codes and standards, but sometimes they may not be overly informed about new innovations in products and construction techniques, and the limitations that new and emergency products may have because their specific design or listing. Are these new practices and products good or bad? Well, who knows? But what must be considered is what might the spin-off or collateral impacts be that may arise by adopting and using them. At the same time, inspection and enforcement budgets are being reduced even when proof dictates they both play a key role in reducing building and fire risks. Usually this is because of special interests, economics, or a lack of skilled workers in those roles. As a former fire chief, I can recall having many less than fruitful discussions with my city manager and city council about increasing the department's enforcement, prevention, and public education capabilities. At that time, perhaps there was too much focus placed on response capability than on the other cogs in the fire and life safety ecosystem. As everything, there needs to be a balance. We know that risk has no geographical boundaries. However, internationally, there are many concerns about government corruption, a non-existent safety culture, or a lack of collaboration among the building and fire officials and inspection and construction entities. Nfpa has been called upon several times to visit developing countries to assist in introducing and adopting even just the basic of codes and standards. It's been found in several cases that where codes and standards may exist, they are often out of date or even ignored. So, unfortunately, when it comes to public safety, often accidents or disasters must occur before any action is taken or any attention given to improve the fire and life safety measures and issues. In addition, there seems to be a growing trend of complacency and the rise of the attitude that it won't happen to me or it can't happen here. With the prevalence and inundation of so many social media platforms on the internet today, more and more stakeholders are experiencing that safety messaging basically just becomes more or less background noise. This will only change when awareness and education is raised that demonstrates consequences and the benefits of taking action. So, how does this ecosystem work? And how do the parts come together? Well, it starts at the top with government responsibility. So what is it? What is the government's responsibility? Well, it's maintaining an effective policy and regulatory environment, supporting building and life safety. It's important because polling has shown people feel the government should be held accountable for ensuring safety requirements are up to date for the constituents. The public assumes it is currently happening, but in many cases we know it may not be taking place. And I've got a few examples that I'd like to bring to your attention tonight. Federal, provincial, and local elected officials must create a regulatory environment where laws, policies, and spending priorities are dictated by public safety needs and not by special interests. That's their job, to protect their citizens, and their citizens expect them to do just that. Some examples. Here's one. August 4th, 2020, Beirut, Lebanon. More than 200 deaths and 6,000 people injured. Due to years of neglect and accusations of corruption, a seized cargo of ammonium nitrate was left for several years on a dockside warehouse due to government cajoling, delaying, or ignoring. What inspection or enforcement activities took place here, if any at all? Another example, and something a little bit closer to home. July 6, 2013, a runaway train hauling 72 tankers filled with Bakken crude oil derailed as it approached the center of the town of Lac-Mégantic, Quebec. Multiple fires occurred and tanker cars exploded due to the high flammability and volatility of the cargo. 47 people were killed. Many buildings and town infrastructure were destroyed. It was the fourth deadliest railway disaster in Canadian history. The derailment led to changes in rail transport safety rules, as well as legal action against the company and the employees involved in the incident. However, years after the derailment, the bankrupt rail company is long gone and out of business. The rebuilding is still ongoing, and many of the town's residents continue to suffer from PTSD. From these examples, what parts of the ecosystem failed and how did this happen? Well, I think we can look at it from the perspective of there is a failure of government to ensure a safe environment. Economic pressures led to reduced safety measures and staffing levels, ever-present cost reductions, a lack of investment in safety, challenged and overwhelmed preparedness and emergency response capabilities, and a lack of oversight and observance of reference standards. So development and use of current codes. Well, using the latest codes and standards developed by experts from across the world to establish minimum levels of safety to protect people and property. It's important because as technology changes, safety advocates are constantly assessing the risks we face in our homes, workplaces, and other buildings, as well as behaviors and actions that can create new hazards. Codes and standards need to be updated to reflect this changing world. And I've got an example to go over there as well. The purpose of provincial amendments to building and fire safety codes is to enhance safety requirements based on local or provincial needs, or to conform to the local regulatory framework. Instead, groups with focused economic interests have exploited the processes to delay the adoption or removal of provisions that they don't like because they have a cost attached, thus undermining the process and making buildings less safe. We also see overcomplicated and over-politicized code processes at the federal, provincial, and local level. Example, on December 17th, 2013, a terrified crane operator was rescued after being trapped for almost 2 hours atop his rig in Kingston as a massive fire broke out below in a 5-story building under construction. The construction was lightweight frame timber construction. A Canadian Forces helicopter rescue team was called in for the dramatic rescue and arrived roughly 55 minutes after being dispatched from nearby Trenton, Ontario. The helicopter hovered over the crane for close to 15 minutes as a rescuer was lowered to help the trapped construction worker. Kingston police said the crane operator suffered only minor injuries and was sent to a local hospital. The fire started in a building that was under construction. The building, intended for student housing, was approximately 5 stories high and was constructed primarily out of wood. The fire started in the stick frame structure and in wind-driven conditions grew out of control extremely quickly. By the time firefighters arrived, there wasn't much left of the original building. The building eventually collapsed under its own fire conditions. High winds also had an adverse effect on the size and progression of the fire. And because it was a wooden structure, a lot of the fire embers flew over top of neighboring buildings and actually set a few other buildings on fire remote from the original site. A full defensive fire tactics were adopted by the fire department, with the building of origin left to burn itself out. The main strategic focus was on putting out exposure fires in neighboring buildings. So what parts of the ecosystem failed in this case? And how could this have happened? Well, failure of inspection and code compliance, lack of building fire prevention and emergency actions, evidently, lack of safeguarding a building under construction and observance of hot work safety practices, keeping in mind the vulnerability of a building when it's in that phase, a lack of on-site preparedness and emergency response, or a total lacking emergency plan whatsoever, and economic pressures likely to lead to reduced safety measures and staffing levels. There are cost reductions may be in play and a lack of investment in safety. Reference standards. So why are they important and what are they? Well, as far as reference standards go, it's applying all standards that are referenced within the primary fire, life safety, building, and fire codes and standards that apply. They're important because reference standards provide critical guidance to designers, installers, facility operators, and enforcers. They are part of the code and must be used to ensure a minimum level of safety for all. Referenced elements are foundational parts of building and fire codes and must be used to do so. And to failure to do so is not maintaining the minimum level of safety that has been established by the code. Keeping in mind, everything in these codes and standards are minimum levels. On June 14th, 2017, a fire broke out in the Grenfell Tower complex in London, England. The fire killed 71 people and injured many more. The rapid spread of the fire was attributed to flammable exterior cladding, a material prohibited by codes referenced within local building regulations, and yet they were used in the refurbishment of this building, and, as it turned out, many others in other countries as well. Contributing to the death and injury toll were the fire department's confusing and sometimes ambiguous messaging to the inhabitants. No automatic sprinkler protection was present. There was simply one single evacuation route for the entire building, and the stairwells became very quickly congested. What was also troubling was the fact that residents were aware of the safety issues in the building, but didn't know who to file the complaints with. So what parts of the ecosystem failed here? And how did this happen? Well, government responsibility, development and use of codes, code compliance and informed public, reference standards, investments in safety, preparedness, and emergency response. So, an investment in safety. This is an interesting piece. Investment in safety is investing in safety, so it should always be a high priority for everyone. We all must work together if we want to diminish losses from fire and related hazards. It's important because if we don't take a vested interest in the safety of the public, and if we make decisions based solely on financial gains, tragedies will ultimately occur. And I've got an example of that as well. Even in an anti-regulatory and cost-cutting environment, code adoption and life safety measures should never be disregarded to save a few dollars. This investment pays off in lives saved and properties protected. Policymakers should do right by their constituents and invest in safe communities. Building officials and first responders must continue to train. They must continue to work in their communities, and they must continue to seek resources to help them with their jobs and keep them safe. Building owners, businesses, and facility managers must keep the safety of their employees, tenants, and clients a top priority when it comes to communication, emergency plans, fire safety measures in buildings, and more. Once occupied, consumers should take steps to ensure their homes and buildings are safe from fire and other hazards. They could do this by investing in residential sprinklers, smoke alarms, things as simple as wildfire risk reduction initiatives, and so on. This keeps them, their families, and occupants safer and reduces the risk of injuries to firefighters and other first responders. An investment in safety does not only relate to monetary gains or losses. Investment means being fully aware, taking a vested interest in, and keeping people's lives and safety in mind every step of the way in a project. Here's an event that I was just involved with as Nfpa, was just recently involved in Kennebecasis Valley in New Brunswick. For those of you who may not be aware, Kennebecasis Valley is a suburban community of about 18,000 people situated just northeast of St. John, New Brunswick. The local fire chief brought a memo to the attention of the local fire board explaining the fire department had come to a state where it was unable to battle fires in many multi-story developments that had been popping up over the past several years. The fire chief explained the department no longer had sufficient staff, equipment, or training for such large-scale fires. The department didn't even have aerial equipment adequate enough to allow for any exterior firefighting, rescue, or search operations. The fire chief referenced Nfpa standards, proposed several strategies to help close the gap as well, and in response, the chair of the fire board dismissed one of the most important and recognized Nfpa standards dealing with deployment and fire department structure. The councillor was of the opinion that Nfpa held no jurisdiction over the matter, and therefore didn't feel the need to listen to the fire chief's concerns or his recommendations. In this particular case, the counselor was entirely correct. He was entirely correct in that those documents are just standards, and NFPA is simply the creator and curator of those standards. However, nonetheless, they are standards developed in accordance with international best practices and created by internationally renowned experts, practitioners, and professionals. Pardon me, sorry, my screen just went there for a sec. Yeah. Sorry, folks, my screen just sort of went dark on me there. And professional building protection engineers. Okay. NFPA codes and standards are routinely seen as the go-to organization for information and guidance. When it was brought to my attention, I mentioned to the individual, if in fact they weren't using NFPA codes or standards, what in fact were they using? And what in fact would be the case if something were to happen and someone was asked, who made the decision to disregard the fire chief's messaging? And making sure that they weren't observing NFPA codes and standards. Because as I said, if you're not using an NFPA code or standard, or any code and standard for that matter, which ones are you? And you need to make your public aware of those particular measures. A skilled workforce. Well, skilled workforce is providing opportunities for professionals to apply the skills they have, offer training when they need it, and reward those who recommit to fire prevention, protection, and education. It's important because by promoting the development and use of skilled professionals, it better ensures that current codes and standards are being correctly applied to their work, and in return, the risk of injuries, loss, and death to workers and the public is reduced. And I have an example of that. On March 17th, 2011, a propane torch being used for roof repairs was the cause of a preventable blaze that killed 2 volunteer firefighters in Listowel, Ontario. Deputy Chief Ken Ray and firefighter Raymond Walter died as a result of a fire caused by workers that were repairing a leak in the roof of the building. Sources said the fire started in a concealed space between the roof and the suspended ceiling, where it burned undetected for a substantial amount of time. There was a reliance on industrial workers and tradespeople with the proper education to follow safe fire practices. Early detection and quick extinguishment in combination with prevention is critical in changing practices. Despite the duration of the fire outbreak, only light smoke was visible and no signs of smoke or fire were apparent inside the building or coming from the roof. What was learned from the investigation was that this was a preventable fire. And while these experiences are incorporated into training programs, it illustrates the unique challenges faced by the fire service when fighting fires in various types of building construction. It really becomes an issue of why, what went wrong, what can be done better, and what can be learned so these types of tragedies don't occur again. One outcome of this tragedy was the implementation of the Ray Walter Act that provides for the recognition and acknowledgement of the presence of truss roof and floor construction. So in this particular case, what parts of the ecosystem failed and killed our 2 firefighters? A lack of observation of building and fire codes and reference standards, a lack of skilled workforce and the failure to observe safe hot work practices, an investment in safety, code compliance, and an informed public. Code compliance. Well, code compliance means supporting effective code enforcement. Whether a house or a new office building, the places people live and work are only as safe as the code compliance in place before, during, and after construction. It's important because it's a fact that enacting and enforcing fire, building and life safety codes and standards, ensuring ongoing inspection, testing, and maintenance of facilities and safety systems reduces deaths, injuries, and losses resulting from building fires. Without sufficient resources to ensure construction and maintenance meet code requirements, communities are missing a critical step in this safety system. Compliance doesn't begin and end at the planning, approval, and construction phase. Compliance is integral throughout the entire life cycle of a building, every phase from planning and zoning through to end-of-life demolition. Think of it as change management. Compliance is just as essential when the building is occupied as when it's under design and construction. One of the biggest challenges for fire and life safety is to identify changes and examine their impact on existing provisions that safeguard an occupancy and decide how to manage changes so initial safeguards are preserved. Some examples. Since February 2009, and as of December 2019, there have been at least 26 children and 17 adults killed in 14 fires in First Nations communities across Canada. Many cases of absent or inadequate fire protection range from no working smoke alarms to little or no fire service, or an ill-equipped and or untrained emergency response capability. In a recent press release from the National Indigenous Fire Safety Council, research has shown that Indigenous peoples across Canada are over 5 times more likely to die in a fire compared to the rest of the Canadian population. And that number increases to over 10 times for First Nations people living on reserves. Some examples. December 2019, 2 adults and 3 children were killed in a house fire in Rochefort Bridge, Alberta, approximately 130 kilometers northwest of Edmonton. When the fire broke out on a Thursday afternoon, neighbors ran to help. They banged on the front door, but didn't get any response. But because it was school dismissal time, they assumed the adults were out picking up their children from school. As fire crews were called, they didn't discover the first body until early the next morning. 4 more bodies were found later in the day. The fire was deemed accidental, and there's no mention of the presence or not of working smoke alarms. May 2019, a mother and 4 children died in a house fire on the Northern Ontario First Nation community of Big Trout Lake when a blaze gutted their lakeside home. A community spokesperson said the First Nation had no effective means of fighting fires, and the community's 1 fire truck was not working, and the fire hall had yet to be completed. All that was compounded by the fact that the community's fire hoses were being used to supply fresh water to the reserve. Here's some other fatal fires that have taken place in First Nations communities in recent years. August 2018, 2 people found dead inside a mobile home that burned to the ground on the Frog Lake First Nation, about 200 kilometers east of Edmonton. December 2016, 1 adult and 4 children die in a fire that destroyed their home on the Oneida Nation of the Thames. A community south of London, Ontario, Oneida Nation of the Thames Chief Randall Phillips said after the blaze that the government had rejected a plea for money to update 50 houses in the community. March 2016, 6 adults and 3 children ranging in age from 5 months to 4 years were killed in a fire on the remote Pikangikum First Nation Reserve in Northern Ontario. Ontario's Regional Chief Isidore Day blamed third world living conditions for the tragedy, saying Pikangikum had no firefighting services and 95% of the homes didn't even have running water. February 2015, 2 school children are killed in a house fire on the Makwa-Sagayakan Reserve in Saskatchewan. The reserve had a working fire truck, but had never used it because it wasn't properly equipped and no one was trained. The band had hired the volunteer fire department from the neighboring village of Loon Lake, but the services were cut off because the band had stopped paying its bills. March 2013, a 14-year-old boy and a 3-year-old child are orphaned after a house fire kills their parents on the Wasagamak Reserve in Manitoba. The reserve didn't have a fire dispatch service because of funding cuts. And the beat goes on and on and on. I could continue. So in these cases, what parts of the ecosystem failed here? And how could this possibly happen? Well, there's government responsibility. There's a lot of responsibility, all shared. Development and use of current codes, use of reference standards, a lack of investment in safety, code compliance, informed public, and a skilled workforce. Preparedness and emergency response. What is it? Well, it's investing in prioritizing and effective preparedness and response capabilities and resources before, during, and after an emergency. Why is it important? When they put their lives on the line, first responders should feel secure in knowing they are properly trained and prepared to protect their communities and that their communities are working to help prevent and prepare for emergency situations. Today, first responders need to be prepared for and respond to not only fires, but a myriad of other disasters that may strike, from vehicle collisions and medical emergencies to natural disasters and man-made catastrophic events. First responders are the first line of offense and defense. They must be well-trained, well-resourced, and well-prepared to meet the varied needs of their communities. Some examples: Fort McMurray and Slave Lake wildland fires. On May 1st, 2016, the Horse River Wildland Fire, also known as Fort McMurray, caused more than $9.9 billion in damage, burning more than 590,000 hectares or 150 million acres, and burned unchecked for 2 months later. At the time, it was the costliest disaster in Canadian history. because the surrounding communities and those within a 90-kilometer radius were somewhat unprepared to provide assistance during such a crisis. Evacuees had to be sent as far away as Edmonton and Red Deer to the south, and the oil sands mining operations in the north. Both the city of Calgary and Edmonton dispatched staff and resources to help with the effort. Parts of the ecosystem that failed here could be provincial and local government responsibility, development of current wildland fire codes, use of reference standards, a skilled workforce, preparedness and emergency response, and the capabilities to evacuate people, and an informed public to be made aware of just exactly what it is they need to do in the event of an emergency. So, an informed public, probably one of the most important keystones or one of the most important cogs on the wheel, and is basically raising awareness and providing resources and educating the public about the dangers posed by fire, electrical, and related hazards. It's important because when given tips and action steps to help address hazards, the public will likely make better, more informed decisions and take action to protect their home and their personal safety. If the public doesn't have the information they need, they may do things that place themselves and others, including firefighters, at greater risk. People may take the extra safety precautions if they understand the risks to themselves, the likelihood of something actually happening to them, and the consequences for not doing anything. Often, the public believes they don't have a role in determining their safety in a house fire or a wildfire, but they do. They can take action. It's up to the community leaders and other stakeholders in the fire and life safety ecosystem to help explain what those action steps are and how they can help reduce their own risks. The public and policymakers often take safety for granted while being relatively uneducated and unaware of fire and other risks. This leads to poor decisions and increased risk. We are living in a time where a recent survey revealed that people believe they are more likely to win the lottery or be struck by lightning than have a fire in their home. We need creative ways to break through the messaging clutter and empower communities, families, and individuals to become their own heroes, to take action to be safer. The thing is, when there is an informed public, they can be strong advocates for safety. They will demand more from their local officials. They will ask more informed questions. They will reach out in the hopes of working better with the fire services in their community, and a lot more. People can be a strong voice behind change, and a call to action when they see the consequences of inaction can be found. Examples. An informed public. On January 29th, 2021, just a couple of weeks ago, at about 4:30 in the morning, emergency crews were called to a home on Gainsborough Road in Toronto's East End for reports of a house fire. Fire officials said 6 people were pulled from the home, 4 people died, and several others were injured, including some firefighters. One of the survivors lost their 6-year-old son, their mother, and 2 friends that were staying in the home. A joint investigation between the Ontario Fire Marshal and the Toronto Fire Services investigators determined the fire was caused by an electrical failure in the dining room ceiling. Additionally, it was determined there were no working smoke alarms in the home. And prior to that, on January 9th, 2018, this is 2018 and not the most recent fire in Oshawa, but 2 adults and 2 children were killed in a house fire in Oshawa, Ontario. Fire crews were called to the scene shortly after 8 a.m. After they received reports that people were trapped in the home, Oshawa fires arrived within minutes. On arrival, firefighters encountered heavy fire and thick smoke, and the house was extensively damaged. It was determined that there were no working smoke alarms in the home, and charges were laid under the Ontario Fire Code to the landowner. The fire chief was left with this message. I don't know how many times fire chiefs have to stand here and say this over and over again. Make sure you have working smoke alarms in your homes. With regard to an informed public, there needs to be more done from a fire and life safety educational perspective. And that includes teaching core skills in understanding fire prevention, electrical safety in the home, safe cooking practices and methods, safe use of fire extinguishers, and home fire escape plans, and drills aside, all needed to come together. So, in conclusion, no single component of the fire and life safety ecosystem can prevent a fire or disaster from occurring. There's no single answer to safety. We may not be able to prevent every tragedy from occurring, but by working together, recommitting or promoting building safety, prevention, protection, and education, we can further our fire and life safety work to help save lives and reduce loss. In closing, I want to challenge you to think about the following actions and take action yourself in developing and supporting the fire and life safety ecosystem. What part do you play in the fire and life safety ecosystem? What more can you be doing to better protect people and property in your communities? What more can we do together? And how can NFPA help in supporting your efforts? How can you work to reduce complacency? There's a need for vigilance when considering code compliance, and everyone must know their segment of the ecosystem and must bear some of the burden. And by working together, this burden is lessened and hazards minimized. Thank you so very much for your attention tonight. And if you'd like more information or guidance on the fire and life safety ecosystem, please don't hesitate to visit the NFPA website or get in touch with me or my colleague Laura King, NFPA's Canadian Public Education Representative. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take a few right now, or please feel free to forward them to us by email at these addresses. Thank you very much and have a pleasant evening.
Great, thank you very much, Shane. I know that we've been monitoring the chat, and some have come directly to me, some have come directly to our other moderators. So Mike, if you're able to start with a couple, and then I'll continue once you're done. You hear yourself okay?
I'm not hearing anything.
Oh, I was muted.
That's fine.
Way to go, Mike.
Anyway, thank you, Shane, for your presentation. I was saying how I found it really interesting and eye-opening that you referred to it as an ecosystem, one where each of us has our own job. And if one part of it fails, then the rest of it will also fail. So in your presentation, a lot of it were about how the ecosystem failed, but can you describe any situations where the ecosystem didn't fail, where it worked like it was supposed to, where all the codes were followed, all the people were educated?
A good question, Mike. The number of times, I'm going to have to think that over, the number of times I see where things have actually gone to plan and haven't gone wrong, unfortunately, they don't gain the same degree of notoriety and newsworthiness as those events that don't apply. So it's tough to sort of give examples. I'll have to think about that one, Mike. But I can certainly cite many, many, many more examples of where the ecosystem had failed or may have failed in one or two of the cogs, and it's gone from there. But yeah, unfortunately, I'm not really sure. Give me a few minutes on that and let me mull it over in my head.
Shane, if you think about your statement about those events don't make the news. So whether it's a fully evacuated building like downtown Toronto had a couple of first or second alarm fires in high rises, with an alarm system activating and with people being able to exit, and all the building's mechanical systems properly with smoke evacuation and all those layers of safety working properly, it wouldn't have made the news if something was a little bit more attractive. If there had been a lottery winner downtown, or if somebody's dog had been rescued from the ice, we wouldn't have even heard about that fire. So to Shane's point, there's so many successes that don't make the news, and I'm fine with that. I think, Shane, you're the same way.
Well, absolutely. There's an old adage that there's no way of telling how many fires you've prevented. Right. So, when you apply all of your skills and your talents and your enforcement activities and your inspection activities, when you do all of those things in concert, that's what keeps the ecosystem going. That's what keeps those cogs all interacting and not binding or jarring. And, as I said, sorry, Mike, I'd love to have a much jazzier response to that. But, these things happen all the time. And as you said, I'll give you an example of the super container ship that just sort of clogged up the Suez Canal for the past 3 or 4 days. Big news there. But how many ships have we ever seen, or do we even care? Do we even know about how many ships go through that Suez Canal on a daily basis that no one is even aware of? I know for me, I was astounded at the number of ships going through there. I was just as astounded at the size of this ship. My goodness, I can't believe that this ship is almost as tall as the CN Tower is long. High, tall, whatever. Anyhow, so yeah, that sort of thing. Thanks, Scott. Yeah. Sorry, Mike.
Thank you.
Shane, the one thing that sort of sticks in my head, and this was a discussion I was having with another person during your presentation, is that there are so many calls to action that don't cost a cent. And when you think about the natural reaction for someone is, well, I didn't know that, but they won't they won't educate themselves. For the 195, congratulations, a big number for a session.
Oh yeah, congratulations, Scott.
But no, it's for the event. For 195 people right now, your immediate call to action to improve your own safety would be to review your own evacuation plan from your house, your condo, wherever you might happen to be. That call to action can include checking your smoke alarms. And those things cost zero money. To carefully check a date, to see whether the device is operational, to talk with the young and the old in your household to see what their evacuation needs might be. These things don't cost a lot. So there are so many wonderful ways of being able to increase our own life safety and to be able to make steps borrowing from parts of the ecosystem to improve our own personal life safety and the life safety of our family members that don't cost anything. You know, check the outlets, no laptops on your bed. There's so many great ways that it really does make you think. It looks like for a portion, Shane might have frozen. Are you back with us, bud? See that he's there, but perhaps.
Let me do this. Connection
Good.
dropped and then reconnected. Sorry. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Okay.
But you're absolutely right, Scott. There are so many things that you can do that are cost-free. And that's why a lot of our public education materials and a lot of our public education programming through Laura King is all cost-free. I mean, anything that Nfpa is developing from a fire and life safety perspective, education and awareness, all free. But the point too, Scott, I think that can't be missed. And that's the beauty of this ecosystem. And Mike mentioned something earlier about sort of like interesting notion that you call this an ecosystem. The idea here is that it plays to everybody. Like everybody has a role to play here. And it's not, it's not some bureaucrat, it's not some elected official who's saying, yeah, I have nothing to do with any of that stuff. Wrong. You're dead wrong. You have all kinds of things to do with regards to these particular initiatives. And same thing when a counselor decides that, my fire chief, what does he know? I'm the counselor. And the problem with these counselors that you need to, and it's part of the fire service's job too, as it is the building department, and as it is the other departments that work in a municipal environment. But it's important that they bring to the attention that, there are so many people that think their fire protection capabilities match that which they see every single night on the media. Every single night, there's a fire of some kind or another, somewhere in Ontario, somewhere else, who knows, but there's a fire of some type that occurs. And when you see these on the TV, you see street loads of fire trucks, you see firefighters hanging out of every window, flames and everything else, and laddering and who knows what all. That's for 15% of the fire departments in the province of Ontario. 85% of the province's fire departments are volunteer departments. At best, they can muster one truck and a full crew within 17 minutes response time. And when you mention that to a politician or one of these politicians of some of the smaller communities, they're saying, hey, yeah, we got lots of fire protection. We're just like we see on Chicago fire. Oh yeah, you think Chicago fire is real? Well, I'll tell you what's real is that what you're going to want, and this is what I said to many people, especially with regards to, I've done this presentation several times. And one presentation I had where they had an individual asking me some questions about the fire death rate on First Nations communities. And the problem, and they're saying, well, can we put a fire truck in every community? No, you can't. I mean, I just gave you some examples of how that didn't work in the first place. It's all about public education awareness. And if you do have a firefighting capability, as long as you can get there, but the thing that you want to make sure, and I got to tell you this as a firefighter, as a fire captain, and as a fire chief, the best thing I could ever see when I arrived on the scene of a fire ground is that I would see the family sitting on the curb and the house on fire. Because that tells me all I got to do is worry about the fire. I don't got to worry about those poor folks who've just lost their home. So
Right.
anyway, I'm
Well,
meandering a bit here. Sorry, Scott.
But that first level of responsibility, that first level of responsibility, Shane, is the family. You know, you can think about the fire truck is the equivalent of a seatbelt in my car. It's, if I don't prepare myself properly, the fire department or the seatbelt can only do so much for me in an emergency. I'm going to go zipping through that front window, much like a homeowner could die in a house fire if they're careless with how they go about their business. So those are safety features, but they can't be like, oh, I have a fire hydrant in front of my house and I have a fire station down the street.
Yeah.
I'll be okay. So I'm going to have a bath with well, I won't have a hair dryer, but you know, you can't just ignore those features. Maybe.
Absolutely. I mean, the number of people, and this is the folly that I get from, like, when I talk to insurers. Insurers, you know, look at your insurance policy for if you're a homeowner, look at your insurance policy, and there will be a line there that says, is your home within 1,000 feet of a fire hydrant? Yeah, but the community I live in has a response time of 17 minutes. So what good's a fire hydrant to me? Like, how am I going to get the water from the fire hydrant to the fire?
Right.
So, you know, that's kind of, yeah, kind of you know, it's false security is what it is. And it's not to diminish the need for water. There's big need for water, obviously, to put a fire out. But, you know, when you look at sort of how things are rated and how things are lined up in that regard, it's, you know, and there can be nothing easier for a family to do and nothing more important for a family to do than, well, actually, there's two things. Making sure you've got working smoke alarms and working carbon monoxides in your home. And secondly, make, learn, practice, and drill a home fire escape plan. It's so important. And everybody, oh yeah, well, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go here. I'm going to go there. Plan it, drill it, try it. Will it work? Some people are saying, yeah, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to climb out the window in my bathroom and I'm going to hop down from the roof that goes outside that window. Okay, well, I'll tell you what, get a ladder, go up on that roof and take a look down and see, is that jump practical? Or am I going to break a leg or something? Well, you might, but you know, and in some cases, that may be your exit. That may be your only exit. It's either that or, as with my place, you put in sprinklers. But anyway, that's just me. Sorry, I had to get that plug in there, Scott.
Mike, I know you've got a couple more questions that are in the chat. Are you able to field them for us?
Yeah, so there's a question from Eduardo. So on the topic of informed public, in a country like Canada that's very multicultural, are there provisions in the codes to account for this, for the multiculturalism?
Well, I wouldn't say there's provisions in the codes explicitly for that purpose, but I will say that our public fire safety and education components predominantly come with translations and culture sensitive ways of approaching the issue. Like, as an example, we have a different sort of approach that we use for ethnic communities that come from the Middle East than we do for communities that may live on a First Nation. So all of those messaging, and you go to the website, and by all means, please feel free to go to the website. I mean, one of our biggest issues is just making sure that we've got information in French. You know, we've got everyone says, oh, it's just Quebec. Well, it's just Quebec. It's not just Quebec. Quebec's like the second largest province in the country. and besides all that, it's not just Quebec. It's New Brunswick. It's Manitoba. There are all kinds of French communities implanted throughout our country. And so those are also areas where, you know, you need to have the message in. But what we've tried to do is reflect and translate and demonstrate, even through, we're starting to use pictographs now as opposed to language for fire safety measures. But we've tried to envelop those in a way that's sensitive to the cultures, sensitive to the different ethnicities, and to individuals who have come to our country, or people who live in our country for that matter, who may still have issues or difficulty with the English language. We even use American Sign Language. We've got some safety messages there that we use for signing. So yeah, is there any specific department or book or whatever we're doing, not specifically, it's more broadly spread.
Right, I have noticed that too. Like my grandparents' apartment, they swapped out the exit signs, the exit words, and it's like the green Running Man sign now. So
Yes,
I
exactly.
have seen that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the next question from Derek, he's asking, how do you think enforcement impacts people's apathy towards fire protection, and like more specifically for fire departments? He's noticed that they try not to be the bad person per se, so instead of giving like a ticket, it would just be like, be careful. So do you think this practice is making fire protection even harder to regulate?
Good question, Derek. Let's face it, a lot of people who join the fire department don't join the fire department to hand out tickets. If they wanted to hand out tickets, they'd have joined the other department. I know in my role as a fire chief in the past, I've had discussions with staff saying, I get it, it's an uncomfortable thing that you have to do, but if you put it in the perspective of, if you don't do this and something happens to this family tonight, or something happens tomorrow, or something happens eventually to this, like, where will you be? How could you feel? Or how would you feel about yourself about not enforcing that particular rule? And I think it's important that people make sure that, enforcement, in my mind, I'm not really an enforcement guy. I'm the kind of guy who says, listen, do you realize what you're doing when you're doing this? And helping educate people, making sure that people are interested and aware. There's an adage of being unaware, unable, or unwilling. If you're unaware, I'm going to teach you. If you're unable, I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you understand how to do that. But if you're unwilling, I'm going to fine you. And I'm going to lay charges under the Ontario Fire Code that and some of them can really wake someone up. There was, I mentioned the one house fire in Oshawa that I just finished discussing. There were four landowners or landlords that owned that building, and every single one of them was charged with some fairly significant and hefty fines because there were 4 people killed in that fire, and the predominance of them was the lack of working smoke alarms. Like, my gosh, what, $20? Okay, go full blown and get a carbon monoxide and a smoke alarm, and that might be the better part of $85. I'll tell you one thing: you have a carbon monoxide event or a fire event that these alarms have managed to get you out of a house in time, worth their weight in gold. How's MasterCard say it? Priceless? I think so.
All right, thank you. So for the next question, kind of a 2-in-1 from Tim and Ayal. It's about residential sprinklers in homes. So have you seen any progress in enforcing residential sprinklers? And if not, like, why are there not more of them in homes?
Well, number one, there's no enforcement of sprinklers because sprinklers are not required in homes. Nfpa 13D doesn't require, NFPA 13D is the standard that would apply if someone was installing sprinklers in their home. But because sprinklers are not covered under the building codes nationally or provincially, there's no way you can require them. However, there are some situations, and I know as a fire chief myself, or a former fire chief, and some current fire chiefs, and some people that we're working with on our Home Fire Sprinkler Coalition, that are identifying certain areas where it's helpful to include sprinklers in your fire protection model. I'll give you an example. Several years ago, the province of British Columbia, the government of the day was looking to awash roughly 30 different bylaws or ordinances that all required residential sprinklers in their homes. So basically, they were going to say to 3,000 communities, no, you're not going to have sprinkler bylaws in your community at all. So we brought to the attention of the minister to say, in BC and in the Lower Mainland and Vancouver general area, of these 30 communities, they started installing sprinklers back in the mid-'80s. So a lot of these communities have actually grown up around having residential sprinklers in the homes. So that means that their fire protection model has been built around the fact that they've got fast response, they've got fast water from the sprinklers, and When they get there, they make sure the fire is out, make sure the family is safe, turn down the water, turn off the water, overhaul, and back to the station they go. So that's roughly 25 years of communities building around that particular technology to help them in their fire protection model. So when we brought that back to the minister was kind of a mindset. Actually, it wasn't so much the minister, it was obviously the ADMs and the people that work in the ministry. And we brought to their attention, you realize that these 30 communities are now going to have to go back and redo their community fire safety plan and better understand or increase their fire protection measures. Because now if you're taking sprinklers away, there isn't going to be any technology there protecting the residents. Now, as far as our progress goes, I like to think we're having great progress. We've got now an organization called the Home Fire Sprinkler Coalition. It's one that we brought north from the US. We've Canadianized it. In fact, the week of May 17th is our National Home Fire Sprinkler Week. And we've actually got a sprinkler symposium planned. And if anybody's interested in listening in on the symposium or attending the symposium, by all means, feel free, it's free. And what you can do is just go to Home Fire Sprinkler Coalition Canada or HFSC-Canada and pull it up. Or if you can't find it, just send me an email and I'll whip it to you. But to see the successes there, we've got a list of testimonials of communities that have seen benefits in installing sprinklers. And there have been some very successful areas where sprinklers have been installed. As an example, Brookfield Properties, just outside of Calgary, are installing between 10 and 15,000 homes over the next 5 to 6 years. And every one of them is going to be installed with residential fire sprinklers. Like, wow. And you know what? They didn't even have to do it. They did it because they thought it was a safe thing to do. And they thought it was the right thing to do, and they were. And we've had other examples where in Central York, Newmarket, Aurora area, there was a community there where the builder wanted to develop the community. The fire department basically said, we have no response capability out there whatsoever. It's way beyond our response call time. And you're going to have to, if you want to continue with this, you're going to have to do some different things. And so they offered a number of things, increasing spacing and less density and all the rest of that good stuff. And basically they came down to the point of saying, well, what if we install sprinklers? Yep, sprinklers will do it. So by installing sprinklers, now these communities are able to infill in a very significant way. The other thing too, about the sprinkler piece and the success that we're having, and this is kind of relating back to the story about British Columbia. What we're finding now is alternatives or trade-ups or trade-offs are becoming very, very attractive to home builders. So if I can put a community in and basically narrow the roads, do you know how much a meter or 2 meters of paving on each side costs for a community to put down? It may allow you to put sprinklers every 1,000 feet as opposed to every 500 feet. That you're halving the number of sprinklers right there. Sprinklers cost roughly, fire hydrants there. So you install fire hydrants every 1,000 feet instead of every 500 feet. Every fire hydrant costs roughly between $7,500 and $1,000. So do the math yourself when you say putting in about 15 to 20 fire hydrants in a community. What about cul-de-sacs? What about setbacks, allowing around buildings to build closer together? And in some cases we've seen, and I don't ask for the study on this, but we've heard justification that by implementing a series of approximately 9 trade-offs that Nfpa has identified, or the home fire sprinklers identified, could potentially improve the yield to a home builder by almost upwards of 10 to 15%. So in a large development where they're talking hundreds of millions of dollars, saving 10% or 15% is not pocket change, for sure.
Shane, I think we have 2 more questions. Mike?
One, actually. So for the final question, it's about the codes, and in some of the Nfpa codes, there might be like loopholes or gaps in them. So is like such as if it's not stated in the code, then it's fine. And there's sort of like this mentality. Is Nfpa doing anything regarding that, like filling up the gaps in the codes?
Well, by all means, we certainly have a very interactive process. We are constantly looking for people to sit on our committees. The various codes and standards If in fact there are some shortcomings or areas where they need improvement, there are a number of phases that a standard has to go through to get to the street, more or less. It's the first input, which basically means NFPA creates a very rough draft, solicits it, puts it out, allows the public to make a first input on it. They'll submit to NFPA the inputs. The committee will look at those inputs and say, hey, yeah, this kind of makes sense, or that doesn't make sense, or we thought that and thought it was maybe undoable, or it was too costly, or whatever. And so then that first draft goes back out as in the comment stage. And so it's basically a second draft that the comment stages are now being made. So interested parties can go online and anyone can participate. You do not need to be an NFPA member to do that, but you can go online and actually read what the amendments are, agree or disagree, or bring forward shortcomings that you see that may exist. And then that will go back for consideration to the committee. The committee will create a third draft of the standard. And then from that point forward, it goes through the various comments through the NFPA Standards Council. And they will make the ultimate decision about whether something moves on or not. But if you do see a gap and you see an area that needs improvement, there are a number of ways, as much as it's daunting as all get out when you think about trying to affect a code change or code change request in the Canadian code system. But it's doable. All you need to do is go to the NRC website for building and fire codes. Code change requests are right there. It'll walk you through the whole thing. But let's face it, I personally find the national model, I find the national model building and fire codes, as well as pretty much every other provincial building and fire code, quite daunting, because they are, in my mind, they are designed for use by engineers and architects and individuals who are highly skilled at the various details and the deferral pieces and everything else. So that's hopefully where Scott's bringing a lot of our Seneca graduates out and making sure that we're going to have a lot more contributing positively to our Canadian building and fire codes processes. So thank you.
I can speak on behalf of all of our staff that I'm sure that we are all trying to meet that mission statement, Shane. It's an army of one. It's an army of all of us.
That's it. Good for you. Outstanding.
Mike?
Sorry, Mike, I'm not sure if I got all that question or not, but.
Yep, you answered it very well. Thank you. Right, so I would like to thank you on behalf of FBSA Seneca for joining us today, this evening, for taking the time out of your evening to present the fire and life safety ecosystem to us. You know, it's been a very eye-opening presentation, as I said earlier. So once again, thank you very much.
Well, Mike, thank you very much. And Scott, thank you very much for having me again. I love speaking to this group. Oh yeah, sure those though.
Well, I just wanted to point out one thing before you get all sappy on me. The fact that this is now your third opportunity speaking with us, you haven't changed very much, my friend, but time has done well to allow you to share all of that experience that's packed up between your 2 ears. This now makes your third large presentation for the student body, as well as you helped co-host a live burn with me. That was the tricky one where we had CTV there with a live helicopter flyby, if you remember.
Yeah, Anwar Knight was there. Yep, I remember that. Yep.
Right. So you have been a tremendous ally to the college and very supportive of all of our students. And I'm very happy to say a good friend of mine, both personally and professionally. Like I said, there's a lot of good nuggets of information between those years, and being able to draw on you to share some of that with us for the students has been a pleasure of mine, and I'm sure I can echo that for the students and staff.
Well, that's great, Scott. I mean, and it's only as now it's becoming a mutual admiration society here, but it's only through your participation and your leadership and the guidance of the school and that of the hierarchy of Seneca College that you're doing such a great job. I mean, when you've got, how many people did we actually get out? Was it 195 people?
Yeah, 195.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. That's good. If all you were looking at, if I was in an audience or an auditorium right now and everyone was looking at me, I wouldn't be nearly as comfortable, I don't think. But one thing I would like to, I just want to straighten this out. I'd like to think I'm a little less portly now than I was then, but maybe not.
Well,
you know, they say the camera adds 20 pounds.
Yeah, the photos are not in sequential order. So I will say yes, of course. It's the camera adds 10 pounds, the web camera takes off 6.
There you go. Okay,
All right.
excellent.
Fantastic. We're going to, everyone, we're going to take a 5-minute break. We're going to let Shane reset and get Chris Gillis geared up. For those of you who did experience a bit of a technical glitch at the very beginning of the presentation, I will certainly offer to everyone the opportunity to rewatch that first, I think it was maybe 5 or 7 minutes. We'll be able to re-show that and post that for later use. And we'll email that out to you. So in all of that stuff, we'll get it to you. And then at the same time, for the next 5 minutes, we'll return at 8:30. But during that 5-minute break, some of those pictures that I was describing, I'm just going to cycle through them so you can see some of those wonderful things that we've been doing on campus. And we'll return at 8:30 with Chris Gillis.
Thanks. And Scott, please apologize to Chris. I think I went over a bit. Anyway, my deepest apologies. And
That's okay, Shane. We'll take it off next time.
attaboy. Thanks, Chris. Okay. Good luck.
Fanfare, folks. We'll see you
Have a
in
great
4
evening.
minutes.
Okay. Bye now.
All right, everyone, we're back from that brief break, and we will continue with the next presentation led by Chris Gillis. Ty, if you're able to start.
All right, hello, are we good?
We are.
All right, it is now my pleasure to introduce you all to Chris Gillis. He will be presenting on the Seneca College Fire Service Training Division new course offerings for 2021. With over 20 years of fire experience and standards development, he has dedicated his career developing firefighter operations and fire prevention training programs. In his current role as program coordinator at Seneca College, he's developed dozens of Nfpa professional qualification courses and certification programs. Chris, please take it away.
Thanks so much, Ty. Just going to start sharing my screen here. All right, just want to do a quick sound check and a quick video so everybody can see. Scott, if you could just give me the thumbs up if you're able to see my screen, that'd be great. Excellent. So thank you very much. And Ty, thank you very much for the introduction. Before I get started, I know that Shane Mintz, I don't believe he's still with us tonight, but Shane, thank you so much for another great information session on NFPA standards and the ecosystem. I look forward to more of those presentations as we continue doing some of these live symposiums. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Chris Gillis, and I'm the program coordinator for the Pre-Service Firefighter Program and the Pre-Service Fire Training Division. I have a couple of things tonight that I want to share with you, some very exciting things to myself. Looking for some of the new NFPA OFM certifications processes. I'm going to provide you with a quick overview of that. I'm also going to share some new Seneca College NFPA course offerings and some training initiatives that we've just started taking on. Throughout the presentation, I hope that I'll be able to answer a lot of the questions that I've gotten from a variety of different alumni and current students that are enrolled in these NFPA courses. But if I don't answer all those questions, of course, we've left a Q&A session at the end for you guys to ask me any questions that you guys might have in regards to this new process and our new training initiatives. And of course, as promised, we will be raffling off 2 free NFPA courses at Seneca College. So firstly, before we get into the new changes, I wanted to touch on some of the existing changes that happened and how we got to the standpoint now where NFPA certification is slowly becoming required to apply for jobs, required to advance into jobs for promotions, and moving forward to late 2021, 2022, probably becoming legislation for training within the fire service and possibly other industries. So for those of you who don't know, a brief history lesson on how we got here. The Ontario Fire Service used to have a closed house certification system, and that's the standards that you see here to the left, the firefighter training officer and fire prevention officer training programs. Those were offered through the OFM at the Fire College, and that was a closed house certification program. So in order for you to be certified as a firefighter, training officer, public educator, or fire prevention officer, you actually had to be employed full-time or part-time as a volunteer with a Ontario Fire Service. In 2014, the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office, who oversees the training for all Ontario fire services throughout the province, decided to adopt the NFPA professional qualification standards. The NFPA professional qualification standards do mandate that they open up training to civilians or to students who wish to become certified. And that was a big change. However, it is important to note that Ontario adopted NFPA professional qualification and training standards because that brought them then in line with the rest of the Canadian fire services and all the other fire services, most of them in the United States, and going up to Canada too. So I believe that we were the last province to adopt the NFPA standards. Another thing that came with the adoption of these NFPA standards is a standardized curriculum right across Canada and mostly in the US too. So who's in charge of certification? The Ontario Fire Marshal's Office is right now going through a little bit of a reorganization, we'll call it. And some of you might noted that they are closing the physical office of the Ontario Fire College in Gravenhurst. The Ontario Fire College will still remain open. It will just be in a different format than actually having the physical space in Gravenhurst for the Fire College. So the new division that is actually now overseeing training, certification, and public education in the Ontario Fire College, in the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office, will be a division that actually oversees everything. In addition to training, they will also oversee the Academic Standards and Evaluation Unit. Now, for those of you who have taken some NFPA courses at Seneca College, you know that the Academic Standards and Evaluation Unit, they are the ones that are responsible for issuing you your IFSAC and Pro Board OFM certification diplomas that you get in the mail if you pass your NFPA course. So the Academic Standards and Evaluation Unit, they are the ones that oversee certification, and the Training and Certification and Public Education Division oversees all of the training. It's important to note that when dealing with the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office, one of their many provincial mandates is to train Ontario Fire Service members. And that means anyone who's a volunteer or a full-time firefighter, fire investigator, fire prevention officer, the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office is required to train Ontario Fire Services. They recognize the need for post-secondary education, so us enrolled in different fire protection programs or fire safety programs, they recognize the need that Ontario Fire Services want and ask for certified individuals moving forward. And a lot of you will, of course, note this as you see a variety of different job postings come up for fire inspectors, public educators, fire investigators, that they always ask for, a long list of NFPA certifications. So the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office noted that in our last meeting with them, and the newly appointed Assistant Deputy Fire Marshal of Training, Certification, and Public Education recognizes the need and support for not just Seneca College, but all colleges across Ontario that will be offering NFPA certifications. So it's nice to know that the support moving forward for colleges like Seneca will be there with the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office. And every time that I talk about the OFM in a forum like this, I always recognize, the fact that there's some of the hardest working people out there. And I know that due to COVID, a lot of the courses were put on hold. A lot of the different mailings for results for certification exams were delayed quite substantially, but they did work through that. And moving forward, they've promised and developed brand new systems that will make the certification process a lot more streamlined. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, but I do always want to thank the OFM and the Academic Standards and Evaluation Unit for the hard work that they do, because they do put forth great effort for people to get their certification so that they can apply for the jobs that they want. So moving forward, the certification venue in Ontario hasn't changed too much. There was one change moving forward, and that the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office will tentatively be able to offer 56 NFPA professional qualifications and levels. So that's a tentative number that they put forward, which will be confirmed, I believe, in September of 2021. And that's up from 42 different qualifications and levels. So they have applied for approximately 14 new professional qualifications, which again, of course, like I said before, will be solidified hopefully in September. But the venue has not changed. The Ontario Fire Marshal's Office works with Seneca College in order to offer certification courses. And the OFM still remains the only certifying body that can issue an NFPA professional qualification standard with an IFSAC and Pro Board seal. So it is their jurisdiction in Ontario, and they are the only ones that should be offering these certification courses in Ontario. So as far as Seneca College and new partnerships and new course offerings, what you guys are going to see, hopefully starting next month, is we entered into a new partnership with the OFM. Instead of having one memorandum of agreement, the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office has actually made some changes to the way they offer their certification courses. Seneca College now has 5 memorandums of understanding with the OFM, and I've listed the 5 here that the OFM is now developing in conjunction with the courses that they want to be certifying to. So as you'll see there in the 5, fire inspector, the fire inspector education program, the public and life safety education program, pre-service firefighter education program, public telecommunications education, and fire service only NFPA professional qualifications. Those are the 5 silos that they have now developed when offering NFPA certification courses. So you'll notice that they are job and or career specific. So they're now grouping different certifications in regards to a fire service job. That was one of the new aspects of their 2021 MOUs with different regional training centers and with the colleges. Now, it's important to note that you do not have to be enrolled in one of these education programs and say that I want to be a fire inspector in order to take a course. You are able to take these courses individually still. So any course you wish to take, whether you take it through Seneca College or another course or another regional training center, you are able to take them individually. This year, we've also increased our course offerings. Seneca College now has 26 fire service NFPA professional qualification courses and levels. That's up from 19. So we will be offering 7 new courses moving forward. And this list, which we will be publishing, which we'll be putting on our website and on our fire protection portal. So moving forward, starting in, I believe, mid-April, we will have a list of all the professional qualification courses that are available. And I'll also be posting an annual course calendar for everybody so that when you want to sign up, you can look ahead of time and see which courses will be offered when, so you can actually schedule for them instead of seeing my posting on Facebook and then scrambling trying to get them before it fills up. So today, I actually just added this because I do have a lot of questions from a variety of different people. After they saw that I'll be speaking tonight, I received dozens of emails asking about which courses are available to students and which courses are not available. I do get a lot of questions asking about when are certain courses available. And of course, the ones that are the hardest to get are the ones that are not available to civilian staff or students. So I'm briefly going to talk about the fire service only memorandum of understanding that we have. And those are the NFPA courses that the OFM does not make available to students or those who are not employed with a fire service yet. So when you're taking your Ontario Fire Service NFPA certifications courses, you need to ask yourself, what's appropriate for my resume when I'm applying for a job, or what are the municipalities asking for? And a lot of you will note that some of the municipalities go above and beyond of what is available to students to apply for a job. I'll use an example. I won't use their name, but a GTA fire department, mid-level fire department, who's recruiting for firefighters right now. They're asking for NFPA 1041, fire service instructor. Now, I can't see how a recruit firefighter would be eligible to be a fire service instructor or training officer. So it's a little bit of contradiction in between of what they're actually asking for at a starter level course as a probationary firefighter. But regardless, the OFM has listed a variety of different standards out there that they only want to certify to fire service personnel. And the list is right here. So the first one, NFPA 1021 fire officer. This is for captains that are in charge of a fire apparatus, and only the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office really only wants fire service personnel who are employed with a volunteer department or with a full-time department to have this NFPA qualification. The same goes with incident safety officer. That would be a senior level certification for somebody who's a captain and above. So I can't see anybody who's in the 6th semester of the FPT program looking to get their fire officer level 3 or their incident safety officer. Again, not something that the OFM thinks that you need, but also not necessarily really something that the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office is able to support because there are over 84 there are over I believe 8,000 firefighters in the GTA alone that the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office is trying to certify, and then you have students on top of that. And believe me, there are students out there that want to have all 56 NFPA courses and certification levels. So moving on, starting in 2021, NFPA 1002 fire apparatus operator for a fire pump is no longer available to students or anybody not employed with a fire service. NFPA 1033 fire investigator is also not available to students, but I did put an asterisk there, so I do have an update on that, which we'll talk about in a couple of slides. And the new NFPA level 3s that are coming out, for example, NFPA 1031 Fire Inspector Level 3 is designed for a management position or a chief officer course. So any level 3s or above are not available to any of those students. So this list here will also be posted next to our annual course calendar for those to see, which are only available to fire service personnel, because we do have a lot of fire service personnel enrolling in our courses. So in addition to professional qualifications, I briefly wanted to talk about an NFPA standard that does have an effect on some of the staffing levels and does have an effect on how Ontario Fire Services actually deploy some of their staff. So one of the more interesting standards, which is just recently published in the 2nd edition, is NFPA 1730. That's the standard on organization and deployment of fire prevention inspectors, code enforcement, plans review, investigation, and public education operations. In short, this basically helps jurisdictions establish community risk plans and the effectiveness of their fire prevention organizations. So fire services will now routinely evaluate their public education programs, their organizational structures, and they will actually take a look at the effectiveness of their prevention and intervention activities. Now, as a Seneca alumni or a current student, you're asking yourself, why do I care? One of the big things that this will affect, of course, is staffing levels and training to NFPA qualifications. The NFPA 1730 standard, which is being used by a variety of different fire departments, especially the larger ones, will look to this standard to develop the framework for their fire prevention divisions. And that is a positive effect on those of you who are looking to apply for jobs in the future. This will give the fire services room for expansion, growth, new job opportunities, and of course, promotion as people move through the ranks, as supervisors and more chiefs are needed for these divisions. Now, one of the great examples that I would like to use would be Toronto Fire Services. Toronto Fire Services use this standard for the framework for their fire prevention division. And what ended up happening with their division after they applied this standard to it is they recognized the need for a new fire investigations division. And they opened up a new division for strictly fire investigations so that they could determine the cause and origin of these fires, and then feed that information to their inspectors and their public educators. Another thing that came out from applying this standard was the Toronto Fire Services actually divided up their inspections and public education division. So now you have a separate public education division and a separate inspections division. And you can see that would create more growth. And as a result, Toronto Fire was hiring to backfill the positions of inspectors that went off into the investigations and public education divisions. So this is all good news moving forward. So as far as Seneca College goes, and for our new training initiatives, in regards to what I've told you tonight from the OFM changes and from NFPA 1730, we actually have 4 training initiatives moving forward, but I'm going to talk about 2 tonight because these are the 2 that we have finalized. I'm going to talk about the Fire Inspector Education Program and the Public and Life Safety Education Program that the OFM has siloed into different training initiatives. So the Fire Public Educator Program, most of you know, especially speaking at an FPT alumni event and the current students, that the first line of defense in the FPPA is public education. So public education, of course, is one of the most important aspects and saves lives without a doubt across the province. So we have decided to develop the first and only Fire Service Public Educator Certificate of Achievement. So this Certificate of Achievement is designed to be an advanced fire service training initiative. So in order for you to enroll in these programs, you will have to have prerequisite knowledge in the fire service or in fire protection, which we'll talk about in a couple minutes. This is an OFM NFPA certification design with respect to what courses are required in order for you to get your fire service public educator certificate. And we've also added industry training courses that go above and beyond the professional qualifications. We have made this certificate of achievement available to fire service members and anybody who wants to take it as a student or through professional development as an individual. So the course framework, the Fire Service Public Education Framework, we worked with different stakeholders, different personnel that work as public educators out in the fire service, division chiefs and fire chiefs that were looking for a certificate program that sort of went above and beyond the NFPA certifications, but also acknowledged the fact that the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office does certify people to life safety educator. So we have 5 courses in total for the first section of this Certificate of Achievement. NFPA 1035 Level 1, Fire Life Safety Educator. That is one of the courses required. The second one is NFPA 1035 Level 2. Third one would be NFPA 1035 Public Information Officer. So that rounds out the professional qualification from NFPA 1035. We also have an industry course that we have developed at Seneca here, and that's the Fire Service Youth Arson Prevention Program. So that course is specifically designed, obviously, for youth arson prevention. And we have also developed a new Fire Service Teaching Strategies course, which we will be attaching to the certificate for anyone who wants to be a fire service public educator in the province of Ontario. Lastly, for a second venue, for those of you that are already in a fire service, we will be offering NFPA 1035 Level 3, and that would be a Fire Service Public Educator Management Certificate of Achievement. So that last course, the 6th one, is only available only available to current fire service members who have achieved all 5 of these courses first, and then wish to move on to get their management certificate. So secondly, we took the Fire Inspector Education Program that the Fire Marshal's Office has siloed into NFPA courses, and we are now going to be offering a Fire Prevention Officer Certificate of Achievement. And again, this is going to be considered an advanced training diploma that incorporates OFM NFPA certifications and industry training courses that we've developed here at Seneca. It's going to be available for fire service members and students, so anybody could really enroll and take these courses. As far as the courses go, again, we took a look at what's required to be a fire prevention officer or a fire prevention inspector in the province of Ontario and through other provinces too. We worked with our stakeholders in different fire services and asked them, what courses would you want to see somebody who would be hired or somebody who would move through the ranks of your department. And they decided that NFPA Fire Inspector Level 1 and Level 2 are actually a no-brainer. Those would be the base framework for a fire inspector that will go into the field for a fire department and perform inspections. Fire and Life Safety Educator Level 1. Now, a lot of fire departments across Ontario do not have the luxury of having a large fire prevention division, or they don't have the luxury in order to have somebody to do public education throughout 5 days a week, and then inspections 5 days a week. So we incorporated NFPA 1035 into this fire prevention officer certificate because we recognize the fact that a lot of fire prevention inspectors and officers are still doing double duty out there just because of the smaller municipalities and towns that we have in Ontario, of course. The BCIN, Ontario Building Code, Fire Protection and Legal Certificate from MMAH is required, and we will be actually offering this BCIN certification course in the next couple of weeks. Fire service enforcement and testimony. This was one of the big things that fire services wanted across Ontario, is that a lot of fire prevention officers, or those even applying for fire prevention officer or inspector positions, did lack that enforcement knowledge and the testimonial knowledge. So we've developed an advanced course for those wishing to take the certificate program to enhance their knowledge on enforcement and to actually get some testimony experience. Of course, once COVID is over, when we're able to have some more in-person classes, we will be utilizing our mock courtroom that the legal program uses at Seneca College in order for our applicants to, in order for our students to complete this course, they can go and get some actual testimony experience for something that they have tried to enforce on, say, a building owner or somebody else who has broken the Ontario Fire Code regulations or the FPPA. And lastly, because a lot of different fire departments do require their fire prevention officers to perform fire investigations. For example, Mississauga, Brampton, Caledon, Oshawa, Whitby, Pickering, a lot of the mid-sized departments who do not have a dedicated fire investigation division require their fire prevention officers to be on call and to have the knowledge and the certification for NFPA 1033. So moving forward, Seneca College is now able to offer anybody who wishes to enroll in this program to take a certified NFPA 1033 course. Now, this course that you take at Seneca College, if you are employed with a fire service, you will have the option to write your academic standards and evaluation exam and get your IFSAC and Pro Board provincial certification through the OFM. But those of you who are not employed with the fire service, you will be able to complete the course and you will be given full credit through the OFM Fire College, indicating that you have completed the NFPA 1033 Fire Investigator course. But since you are not employed with a fire service, you are not eligible for certification. If you complete the course and you are then hired by a fire department, you will then be able to use your letter from Seneca College and participate then in the OFM NFPA 1033 written exam. And then of course you'll be able to get your certification. So they're basically putting certification on hold. And I thought this was a really good acknowledgement from the OFM, recognizing the fact that a lot of entry-level fire prevention inspector and fire prevention officer jobs are asking for NFPA 1033. So I'd like to thank the OFM for giving us this opportunity to offer this course and to incorporate it into our Certificate of Achievement. Lastly, the same application for the Fire Service Public Educator, we will be offering NFPA 1031 Fire Inspector Level 3 for a management certificate. Again, that is only available to fire service personnel. So that rounds out the 6 courses for the Seneca Fire Prevention Officer Certificate Program. Sorry, Certificate of Achievement. Lastly, just to reiterate what these certificates of achievement will incorporate, where applicable, where there's an NFPA standard attached to the course, they will be IFSAC and Pro Board accredited still via the OFM. Any of the other courses are considered industry training courses and they're non-college credits. So when you decide to take the advanced public education strategies, for example, that will be a 20-hour course, which will be available in an online hybrid format and considered a non-college credit, but an industry credit. Fire service credentials for existing staff and applicants. So anybody who has their existing OFM IFSAC accredited diplomas or certifications, of course, you could apply those credentials to any of these certificates of achievement. And we're going to continue with the online flexible learning. I believe, the last couple of courses that we ran, NFPA 1031 with Angie Safko was a big hit. NFPA 1035 level 2 with Denise Hines, which is going on right now. That delivery model seems to be extremely popular with those who are enrolled in it. So we're going to continue with that format, and we're going to apply that format to the NFPA 1033 Fire Investigator course too. But of course, there will be some need for some in-person skills. For example, possibly doing a presentation, testifying in court, or again, performing a fire investigation. So we will be bringing back those in-person skills where necessary, and of course, when allowed, when the province opens up the colleges and allows for in-person learning. So as far as prerequisite goes, anybody who has taken a 2 or 3 year fire protection engineering or fire safety diploma from another college will be allowed to enroll in these certificates of achievement. Because remember, these certificates of achievement, we are considering them advanced level courses and training towards that certificate of achievement. Any college related certificate combined with work experience will also meet the prerequisite threshold in order to be enrolled in our certificate of achievement. University degree, of course, with combined work experience will also be considered depending on if that degree meets the threshold of having fire protection engineering or fire safety courses within it. So lastly, we were going to talk about what you can expect from the Seneca Fire Service Training Division in 2021. I do believe from the meetings that we have had with the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office that provincial legislation on mandatory certification will be returning in the FPPA. It was originally brought forth in the in the previous Liberal government. They had pushed it through and had it approved in the FPPA for mandatory training, but was then subsequently canceled by our current government, but is now returning. It appears to be returning again, a little bit modified, but mandatory certification for NFPA professional qualifications will be mandatory either in 2021 or 2022 moving forward. So I believe that will be happening sooner than later. We're going to continue with our online course delivery. Like I said before, until the provincial government opens up the colleges. So we are going to continue with our current format. Some of you will be happy to hear, and I know a lot of you that are in the audience tonight, virtually in the audience tonight, have taken NFPA courses with us. One of the changes that the OFM has made, that Seneca College will now be responsible for the delivery and mailing of your certificate. So we hope to have this process streamlined, where the OFM will give us your results a lot quicker than usual, and then Seneca College will be mailing this out to you. Again, I'm going to have a annual course calendar developed, so those of you can plan ahead of time and sign up for whichever courses any course that you desire to take. And in September 2021, we hope to have the first certificate of achievement issued for those of you that are interested. So that is my presentation on the update on Seneca Colleges and the province's NFPA professional qualification courses. I'd like to thank everybody who stuck around to listen to my presentation. And of course, if there are any questions, please feel free to ask any questions. So Scott, I'll open this up to any of the questions that somebody might have.
Okay. Hi, Chris. I have a question from Justin.
Yes.
And the question is, how many NFPA certificates are generally ideal for any type of fire protection application?
What type of application? Can I ask a question back, if possible? What type of application are we talking about here? Are we talking about to apply for a job?
Right. So let's say you're a student, just graduated, and you're applying for a job at like the fire department. What kind of certificates would help your application?
So that's exactly what the OFM has done. They've siloed their OFM certifications and the NFPA certifications, and they have basically made them into a job or career oriented silo. So if you wanted to become a fire prevention inspector or fire prevention officer, I would recommend NFPA 1031, fire inspector level 1 and 2, the public educator, NFPA 1035 level 1, and a building code BCIN certification, and then of course fire investigation 2. That would round out your application and actually give you 2 courses shy of the new certificate of achievement for fire prevention officer that we've just talked about. So, you know, without going to take the full certificate of achievement for fire prevention officer, those 4 certifications, fire inspector 1 and 2, educator 1, and fire investigator, would put you, I believe, at the top of the food chain, so to speak, for applying for jobs.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Hopefully that answers their question. The next question is from Eduardo. Will there be a difference on tuition for domestic and international students?
These courses, these are not tuition related courses, so everybody pays the exact same fee. There's no additional cost for international students. We did have a couple of international students enroll that were taking the fire protection engineering 3-year program, and there's no additional fees. The college paid a couple extra dollars to, you know, mail that certificate out to them, but no, everybody pays the same fees.
All right, thank you. So for the new FPO certificate, are the BCIN courses recognized by the OBOA?
So I believe that was Jeremy Bullen. So yes, the BCIN, I believe, is recognized by the OBOA. The BCIN is actually offered in conjunction with the OBOA. So yes, to answer your question short, yes.
And the next question is, where can we find the dates and how can we apply?
So we do have a fire protection portal right now where you can enroll in courses that are open, but I will be developing and sending out a course calendar with all the NFPA certification courses from April 2021 through to April 2022. You'll be able to find a link on the main fire protection program website, but I'll also be sending out via our Facebook, Instagram, and of course we do have the mailing list from everybody tonight to be able to send out the certificate of achievement information and of course the course calendar.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is, will the annual calendar be available on any social media platforms or any other platforms to view at a later
Yes.
date?
Yes, so you'll be able to get your, it'll be on our landing page. That's our fire protection NFPA training portal right now. So there will be a new link. Once it's established, I believe in middle of April, there'll be a link that will take you directly to the course calendar, which you'll then be able to save, print off, keep on your own computer. And then you'll be able to also see the courses that are currently open to.
Thank you. And our next question is, if someone previously took the fire investigator course, would that be an equivalent to the new one?
The current fire protection engineering and fire investigation course and the previous one does not meet the threshold of NFPA 1033 course that I mentioned in the certificate of achievement. The one that we're offering in the fire prevention officer certificate achievement is more of an advanced fire investigation course. So in short, no. This will be almost a continuation of that course that you took as part of the FPT full-time program.
All right, thank you. And for the next question is, after graduating from Seneca, can they come back and get these certificates without being full-time students?
Absolutely. These are non-college credits. They are OFM accredited industry-specific courses that are offered in partnership with the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office and Seneca College. So absolutely, you can come back and take them. If you haven't taken them yet and don't know of anybody who's taken them, we have a great online format right now where you basically sign on to Blackboard and you're able to view the course outline, course itinerary, download your assignments, and view any of the PowerPoint discussions, PowerPoint presentations that are preloaded, pre-recorded by the instructor. So you can actually learn at your own leisure and follow a recommended time frame for when your provincial exam will be at the very end. In addition to having them online, we've also inputted some online Zoom meetings with the course professors throughout the course so that you could actually talk to somebody one-on-one in case you're unable to get a sufficient answer through email or you're not sure about a course. So every course is online with professor or instructor support via Zoom.
All right, thank you, Chris. And for the final question, once you receive the certification, how long does it stay valid for?
Well, the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office, NFPA, IFSAC accredited certifications do not have an expiry date.
Thank you, Chris. That will be all for our questions for tonight. If anyone still has any more questions, I'm sure that Chris is more than happy to address them through emails.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I go back here to do our quick raffle, my email address, I'll be posting it as part of my PowerPoint there at the very end. For those of you that don't have it, I can actually post it here in the chat too. So I'll just quickly put it. For those of you that don't have it, I'll just put it there. It's in the chat right there. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to my screen if that's all right. Okay, so if anybody has any other questions, I apologize I was not able to get to you guys tonight, but please feel free to send me an email. So before, as we move on, we are going to raffle off 2 free NFPA courses. This was done with a random generator. we decided to give away 2 courses. These courses have no monetary value, so I'm just going to give you my disclaimer real quick. These courses have no monetary value. They can't be transferred to any of your friends or any of your family members. So if you are the winner, you will have to take this course or not take this course. And of course, if you sign up for this course, you do need to, of course, meet all the prerequisites for any of the programs that you are offered. So that's my quick disclaimer. The winners will be given an email with your free course certificate. So the first winner is
You went to PowerPoint school.
you did.
It's good stuff.
The first winner is Megan Easby. I do recognize that name. She, I believe, graduated last year or possibly the year before. It's been so long, I can't remember. So she was Megan Easby. She is the winner. Congratulations, Megan. You have won 1 free Seneca College NFPA course. All right, second one coming up. Oh, we didn't have so much of a PowerPoint build up. Sean Morgan. Sean Morgan, you are the winner of the second NFPA course. So Sean, I recognize your name. I believe you've taken a couple other courses before. So congratulations. You have won a NFPA course at Seneca College. Congratulations, everybody. There's some of my NFPA stuff. Sorry, there's some of my PowerPoint skills. Yeah, I just didn't get it beforehand.
It's all good, Chris. I'm
Okay.
just using it. So that would conclude Chris's presentation. Mike or Ty, is there anything?
I would just like to give another thank you for that amazing performance. It's always nice to hear about all the certifications and NFPA standards that you can get through Seneca.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Ty.
Great. So a little bit of housekeeping businesses, a couple business related items. We already have next year's date selected. It seems crazy to think that far ahead, but there's some pretty big reasons for that. We've selected March 22nd, 2022, and seeing it sort of on screen, it wasn't meant to be 2022, but let's just pretend it was meant to be that way. Will be our 11th annual industry dinner. Hopefully it's a full-blown dinner, but it'll also coincide with our 50th anniversary of our program, which is really kind of nice that the 22s and the 22s and then the 72 and the 2002, we've got a lot of nice synergy going on there. And it's our goal to be able to have that an in-person session. Some of you are familiar with the story of Sean and Alvaro. Sean Simons and Alvaro Lannis are 2 burn survivors from a major dorm fire in the US. Their story is both incredible to hear and inspiring, and we're going to be very, very hopeful that we'll be able to have them on campus as we have before. However, they worked out to be the pioneer of our very first online session, where due to an ice storm, suddenly they weren't able to catch their flights coming in from New York. And we did this online thing about 4 or 5 years ago, actually longer than that, out of necessity before COVID. So we're hoping that you'll be able to consider joining us on the 22nd of March next year. Additionally, I would encourage everyone to follow along our various social media channels, whether that's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn, including TikTok now, because that's how things are going with different items. That QR code in the bottom right-hand corner is for quick access to our website or our YouTube channel, which will try to provide more video content for you in the future. And if I was like a host, I'd chuck my paperwork and say that's it, but we're all set. So for those of you who hung out, for the rest, congratulations to our award winners. Thank you both to Shane and for Chris for presenting with us today. But I'm very happy to say that thank you all, and I hope you're all safe, and we'll see you in the very near future. We do have a poll, by the way. Before we leave, we have to start a poll. But for the time being, that's it. That's all. Thanks very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey, Phil, are you speaking? I think you might be muted.
You certainly caught me there. I was hoping to just see if I could do that small follow-up for the newsletters with the remaining people that we have here. And can't thank you enough for putting off this event. That was incredible. And certainly for our last, but maybe not exactly our last. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who came. So for the last couple remaining weeks that we have of the semester, I do want to say we are still taking in our year experience, our 2-year co-op experience, and our graduating 3rd year newsletters, articles. I think these are a great way to kind of get your name out and in the industry matter, kind of pushes you right forward. And we would love to and joining us on our 10th annual. And hey, I think 195 students out of 300 who registered. I think everyone here, and thank you so much, Sarah, Ty, Scott, Mike. Thanks to Chris and Shane as well, and the entire FPSA group as well. I think that was phenomenally done, and hats off to everyone.
Absolutely. Congratulations, everyone.